an honour and a privilege, or to put it in another way, I was really chuffed to get the invitation. So thank you very much indeed. So this is why I'm here. I gave a nice broad title so I could talk about anything, because, you know, I don't know what I'm going to talk about, so there we go. The first thing also to say is congratulations to you guys on that bronze award, and I took that from your newsletter, and there with Julia. I've already met Julia there as well, so very nice, and yes, so I think yes. So very nice to meet you in person, and again, congratulations on that. I know what a lot of work it is. So to start off, this life scientific and personal, both of them can be a pain. So as you, can you all see all right, or should I? Yeah. Can be a pain. And you heard also from John that my research endeavours are around childbirth and labour and so forth. So have to say though, it's funny, I don't recognise that woman with the dark hair. You know? Strange what happens with ageing, isn't it? That's Emily, my firstborn, and then there's two others, Tom and Mark. So they, and I don't know whether I mean the children or the life scientific, can be a pain, but of course often a joy. So I wanted to start by just saying, well, you know, why am I here kind of thing? Why did they invite me? And to emphasise, I went to UCL. I chose UCL because it was the first university to actually let women graduate. And as a very impressionable 17-year-old, that was where I wanted to be. So that's where I went to read physiology. I did a PhD there, had a baby. 11 years later, went to Liverpool, lectureship, got to my personal chair there 6 years later, did a stint as head of department. And of course, in the meantime, did the things that you do. You say yes to various invitations, committees, journals, etc. And then I say, you know, I'll retire once I've succeeded, once I'm on top. So it looks great, doesn't it? But there's always a but, isn't there? As you know, real life ain't like that for most of us. And decisions, yes. I decided to do a PhD the day I got my degree results. That's how planned and focused I was, yes. And today, we wouldn't allow the PhD students, or the wannabe PhD students, to do that. The poor things have to apply, it seems like 12 months in advance, and have said they're so besotted and there's nothing else they've ever thought of doing. And, you know, and I was lucky, there was an MRC postgraduate studentship going, so, oh, yes, you can have it, Sue, like your results. How did I choose my PhD supervisor? Did I choose the one with the most publications and get up and go? Remember, in the dark ages, it was actually quite hard to find out who'd published a lot. No, I chose the one who I thought would be kind to me, nice. You see the wimp who stands before you, who would be nice and kind to me. So this was elderly professor, male, and I picked up very quickly, starting the PhD, that although he had published on connective tissues and reproductive tract, now just a few years from retirement, he'd shifted to studying ants in Greece. So, not in his, no. So, in a way it was, you know, you either thrived in that or you went down big time, yes? So it actually did teach me to think for myself, stand on my own 2 feet, and become clear about why I was doing things. Obviously he was there occasionally, you know, and helped me. That was good. It's not really a complaint, but can you imagine that in today's world? You know, if the student fails the PhD, whose fault is that? We won't go into that. It's probably different at your institute, but it's a thought, isn't it? And then finish the PhD, have a baby. So organised, so planned. Wow, who is this? Yeah, this is somebody who works in reproduction. Didn't know she was pregnant while doing her PhD until I was 4 months pregnant. How can that be? I thought my periods had just got a bit lighter. I still have. Anyway, you don't want to know all that graphic stuff. But that's how it... And so, without a word of a lie, I finished my experiments on the Friday. We'd organised a tea party, quite genteel, wasn't it? A tea party, say goodbye to me. And I went into the elderly male professor's room to say, oh, Robert, we're just going to have the tea and coffee now. And my waters broke. Terrific. So he remembered me. So it was not a great planning, it was just the way it worked out. Although, of course, you know, you can write up when you're at home, so it's not incompatible. But thank goodness I didn't get, anyway, twins or anything like that. I don't think I could have coped. So then, the lectureship in Liverpool and the help sign. Why is that? Because I was so once I'd written up, I was happy being at home with Emily, and my confidence was never great. And I didn't make much of an effort. I knew there was a position for me on a grant waiting for me, but you know, you lose a bit of confidence sometimes if you've been out of the mill. And it was actually the supervisor, his wife, he was the professor, she of course was the lecturer. She came to see me, "Oh, how are you, Sue?" And in a gentle way said to me, you know, if you're going to go back and there is a position, you should think about sort of doing it nowish, you know, you've been at home for 9 months, and because it only gets harder. And I think those were really, for me, really wise words. And I think if she hadn't have come, I might not have gone back. I say that because husband number 1, it's not a huge collection, but husband number 1 was not encouraging for me to go back to work. I was a little bit, well, I was good. Okay, so a little bit of competition there. And also, this is, again, the dark ages, where not so many women, anyway, went back to work quite soon after having a child. By quite soon, I mean about 9 months to a year. So if it wasn't for Margaret, I don't think I would have gone back. I went back and, of course, then had to prove myself, wanted to prove myself. So what do? You work twice as hard and all the rest of it to prove. I set up a new course, fetal and maternal physiology, very popular with the students. I got more grants, I got my papers looking good. A lectureship came up in the department. I applied for it, didn't get it. Well, of course, you know, it's all good training, isn't it? You know, you do it, you don't expect to get the first job, do you? That comes out. Fine, carried on in my own little way, improving. You know, started to get some invitations. Second job came up, applied for it, didn't get it. Yeah, this is a bit, it's so humiliating to be the internal candidate who's not successful. But anyway, this happens, you know, you've got to struggle, yeah, keep on, don't give up, rah, rah, rah. Third lectureship eventually comes up, probably, looking at that, probably in 1989. And CV even stronger, more invitations, more papers, you get where this is going, yes. Didn't get it. And I was really feeling, there's something, you know, and it was somebody, a male who'd been on the selection committee and said, "Sue, they're never going to give you a job here because your husband," so this is husband number 2, come in David, husband number 2, and 2 more children, incidentally, "he's got a job here. You're not going to move. Why should we waste a job on you? And in any case, you can get grants, you're bringing in your salary, you can get fellowships, so they're not going to give you a job." So that was really quite upsetting. You think, you know, you're giving your all, and we think that the institution has some beating heart sometimes. But anyway, at least he was frank and kind enough to tell me. And so husband and I said, well, that's not on really, and we will move. And it was he who got the job in Liverpool that enabled me, on his coattails, to get a lectureship in physiology. And of course, you see that, you know, you're going to Liverpool, especially to David, of course. You're going to Liverpool. Nobody voluntarily goes to Liverpool, you know. Be the death of you, you know. Well, it wasn't, it ain't. It never would have been, of course. And anyway, so that's what the help with, without somebody just setting you straight about things occasionally, without the right choice of partner or spouse. Things could have been very different. And then the final thing is, you know, when will I have made it? When will I have got there? Because I'm always thinking, you know, oh yes, I must say yes to that extra committee. You know, I'm nearly there, I'm nearly there, I'm nearly a somebody. And I'm probably never satisfied or something, or particularly stupid, whatever. Anyway, so, you know, when will I retire? Who knows? Who knows? When can we afford to retire? So, just makes the point, doesn't it, that as we all know anyway, very few careers are that straight arrow. Most of us have wobbles and dips, good times and bad times, and we stay with it. So I'm going to spend 10 minutes saying something about the science I do, because if it wasn't for the science, I wouldn't have succeeded the way I have, if we're saying I succeeded, and also because I think it's interested, I'm passionate about it, and it just happens to be on women and childbirth. And I'm just going to change that over to there so I can take my hairy jacket off. So, the Life Scientific, so we've already seen that. Childbirth, there is some pain associated with it, but it's marvellous really, isn't it, because of the end result. Not one of mine, unfortunately, but there we go. So this is what I research on: childbirth, labour and delivery. And again, to put it in a broader context, there are some really appalling statistics around childbirth, pregnancy and labour. And around 1/3 of a million women every year die from complications associated with pregnancy and childbirth. This is why it was one of the Millennium Goals, and we're nowhere near that goal yet. And a child whose mother dies, and this is so, so sad, they themselves are much more unlikely to make their second birthday. So when mothers die, it affects more than just the mother, obviously. Obviously, fathers are important too, but a mother, I would say, still in most households, most countries, has an extra special bond. So those are really shocking and sad statistics. So unfortunately, I can't claim credit for sorting out all the world's problems, but we do our research, don't we? Sometimes with a thought at the back of our minds, it may one day be useful in some way, shape or form, even if it is basic science as well, that someone will pick up on it. And I'd just like to say my own particular field is pretty rubbish, actually, in terms of how close we are to understanding something as basic as childbirth, labour and delivery. And you think about it, this is not an uncommon event, is it? You'd think we'd written the book, written it backwards for every way possible, but no. So my particular interest is the muscle in the uterus or the womb. So for those of you who don't know, the uterus is a really powerful, big muscle. That's what most of the cells are. They're muscle cells in your uterus if you're fortunate enough to have one. So it's very muscular. There's no bias here. I detect no bias. So that muscle activity, you can imagine if it starts off too early, then that's the threatened or actual preterm birth, which is about 1 in 10. It's very common. And in this country, it is the largest killer of babies, preterm delivery. If your uterus doesn't contract hard after you've delivered the placenta, then all that blood that was going to the placenta hemorrhages out. So postpartum hemorrhage also needs muscular activity to prevent it. But if you start off with a term labour, it can start off going well and then just actually stall. The cervix, which is what that muscular effort is for, the uterus is effacing the cervix so it gets to 10 centimetres. But sometimes it starts off well and stops at 2 or 3 centimetres. And really, we don't know why, or we have very little insight. As well as we can give you one drug to help you. And it's not really a drug, it's based on the hormone. It's the hormone oxytocin, which many of you may have heard of, but a childbirth hormone to stimulate the uterus. So here, just a tiny aside, just one slide. So these are our women's problems, aren't they? Because you can have heart failure, you wouldn't want it, you can have it. I flick through my pharmacopoeia, at least 50 drugs to help you. Really good news, not bitter and twisted at all, compared to uterine failure, if we called it that. Just the one drug, oxytocin. 50 years ago, started using it, nothing since, nothing. So uterine failure. So there's the uterus, ovaries, cervix and all the rest of it. And so this is what I feel about it. Yeah. So we've got to do better than this, haven't we? We've got to do better than this. So that means so about 50% of women given the one drug will respond to it and end up having a normal delivery. 50% won't. And for them then, there's nothing you can do other than surgery. And sometimes surgery where it's a bit of a rush and a shovel because you didn't think you were having a caesarean section. So it's not the pleasant, both for staff and for the mother and for the baby. So that's not good. And remember, these are on the whole healthy, because these aren't the planned caesarean sections, these aren't electives. So these are healthy, youngish, on the whole, women having surgery that they never thought or expected or necessarily wanted. So that's not very good, is it? No. So we need to know more. I need to get more grants. I need to get more people. We need to spread the word. We need more research into this, actually, because it's about time we started tackling some of these. Somebody you may recognise now, who you poached from Manchester, recruited from Manchester. So that rise from getting the lectureship to the chair in 6 years, I'm sure I would not have been able to do that without having appointed Claire as my first postdoc. So she was brilliant and wonderful, and all the things that I'm sure she's bringing to you here. She was ace, as my children would say, yes. And Claire was interested in the same sort of muscle as in the uterus, but in blood vessels. It's called smooth muscle. And she was also interested in what acid outside those cells, did to the ability of those cells to contract. And so that sort of started this work, and we've carried on looking at it in the uterus. So thank you, Claire. So just very briefly to remind you, so there's a baby surrounded by the uterus, and it's incredible how much the uterus grows. Just think, this is controlled, it's not a cancerous growth. Amazing growth, and controlled, because most of the time, luckily, it doesn't go into contractions too early. But think about its relation. I'm twisting it over and expanding it. So there's the placenta through which blood to and from the fetus. The placenta lies against the uterine surface there, and there's the muscle. And so within the muscle of the uterus is the blood supply that goes to and from the fetus. So imagine now what happens when that muscle contracts. And that's what's shown there. So that imagine there's the uterus contracting, and it contracts hard. That's why it's called labour. It's hard work, big contractions. Those are the blood vessels going through it. So as it contracts, it occludes those blood vessels. And so what we can show is that, so those are genuine contractions recorded in vivo. And it doesn't matter what species, actually. It could be a woman, could be a rat, could be a racehorse, G topically. Right. If you're simultaneously recording blood flow with laser Doppler flow, you can see that after the peak of these contractions, the blood flow goes down and then recovers. Again, contraction, blood flow dips, recovers, contraction down. In other words, there is this relationship, as you might expect from the clamp visuals here, no expense spared, guys. Yeah. Blood flow goes down, and that's normal maternal physiology, that relationship between the contraction and flow. And I think you can see that you wouldn't want the contractions to go on for too long, or else they would cut off the blood supply for too long. And again, as I'm sure many of you will know, if you cut off the blood supply, or not cut it off, reduce it, you're reducing oxygen, aren't you, which we call hypoxia. That increases lactate production. Those of you who are sports-minded, and we came in by the sports centre, so maybe there's one or two. Anyway, you are aware of the burn and lactate as the oxygen levels drop. You switch metabolism, produce more lactate. But that's actually lactic acid. It's acid that you're producing. So we asked ourselves, what does lactate do to force in the uterus? Because we know that the lactate increases. And that's the result. So these are contractions of the uterus, and it's a sort of poor man's dose-response curve there. And you can see the alteration in the pattern until it's a sufficient concentration, contractions are abolished. So if lactate accumulates outside the uterine muscle cells, you would expect contractions to begin to fail and decrease. And the reason for that is that the inside of the cells become acid. And what that does is, it doesn't matter whether this is a single cell, you're measuring calcium current, you can see it goes down. Muscles need calcium to contract. If your calcium current goes down, not enough calcium. If your calcium goes down, not enough muscle force. So this all feeds into the fact that contractions, isn't that lovely? The contractions go down. So could this be in some way a cause of dysfunctional labour? And why you need to have that unplanned caesarean section? And look happier, missus. Yeah, right. So, because my labs are at the University of Liverpool, my labs are at the Women's Hospital. So therefore there's women giving birth, and because I haven't cured and stopped all caesarean sections yet, we can get, with informed consent, biopsies from those women having caesarean sections. And with clinical colleagues, we get the blood from, you just put the knife into the uterus, get the blood straight away, run off to the blood gas analyzer on labour ward, see about the pH, see about the oxygenation, see about the lactate in it. And what we saw, these were C-sections for various reasons that I won't bore you with. There's the pH. And for those who are not familiar, pH is acid, and the lower the values, the more acid it is. So you just have to get your head around that. So this is much more statistically significantly more acid than these women who were having a caesarean section for other reasons, like electively, for example, like a breech birth, for example. So that's a huge difference we found just in this group that were labouring dysfunction. And we did the analysis afterwards, and all this was blinded. It was done properly, as you would expect. Moreover, we found a doubling of the lactate in that capillary blood. So just to say, this wasn't your whole body going into meltdown here. It is specifically around the uterus within the womb. So I can take no credit for this headline. A colleague in Stockholm reading this, talking about it, and she thought, okay, because this was really actually the first insight into dysfunctional labour. So if it's going up, and that's important, some of that lactate will get into the amniotic fluid. So we'll go on labour ward, and there'll be some leakage in almost all cases of amniotic fluid. So I'm going to measure the lactate in the amniotic fluid and then see what happens to those women's labours. Therefore, this was the headline that came from that this is a test to predict who'll need caesarean sections. She set up her own company. Basically, it's just a little electrode that sucks up the fluid, gets a potential, measures how much lactate. And what she found in the studies was, so it's amniotic fluid lactate. So she says a normal level of the lactate is a strong indication will result in an okay vaginal delivery. On the other hand, a high level is a strong indication that the delivery will end in operative interventions, and that's C-section. So that's really good because I like it. It's good for the ego, isn't it? You find something as a scientist and then a clinician comes along and does that. But I would say that it doesn't actually get me that much further, because who actually wants to be told just as labour started, oh yeah, you're going to fail. Yeah, you're probably going to need to say, yeah, it's obviously you can couch it better than that, and you can prepare, and there is some importance, and you can tell the medical staff they're prepared. But by and large, I would really prefer it not to happen in the first place, to know a bit more about why did you have a lot of lactate? Why didn't you have a lot of lactate? I would like a test for that, but we're a bit off that so far. So just 2 minutes on the second bit is to just say, because biology is wonderful and complicated and much cleverer than probably all of us, that some of this hypoxia and acid looks like it could be good. These again, uterine contractions, and you can record them for hours, very steady, very good tissue, the uterus. And so we replaced some of the oxygen with nitrogen. We did that hypoxia, and you can see, as we would expect, the contractions fall. But what we did is just do the hypoxia, not too deep, not too long, just right, and repeated it. And what we saw is, so there you go back to normal solution, contractions recover, And there's some overshoot, okay. And then we did it again. Oh, and it's a bit bigger, and did it again. And we've come up with a phenomenon that I think goes some way to explain why contractions get bigger in labour, because oxytocin plays a role, but it's not everything. What we think is that the repetitive nature of having the oxygen dip stimulates mechanisms within the cell that build up, that help the contractions grow bigger in the face of an environment that is pretty hostile. It's getting acidic, it's getting hypoxic, there's lactate building up. How does normal childbirth ever work? You know, those are not how you would design it, is it? Except that perhaps there is this unique mechanism which we've called HIFI, hypoxia-induced force increase. And it does happen in women as well. So this was a labouring woman. It's quite difficult getting these samples because these are women in labour. But again, we get it because you don't get it early on. So it seems to be there and just at the right time. So we're excited about that. So I've told you about that. So there we go. So, rah, 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 more research in this area, and let's help women and children, of course. And there's me on a good hair day. Right. So, let's go on to the meat of the talk. So, where are we? What are the issues? Because it's so much easier for you young women and young fathers. It's so much easier, isn't it? Well, no, but it's to remind me that my experience of having children back in the dark ages will not be the same as yours, bringing up those children and what you're juggling with and what reactions you'll get from your colleagues or not. So it is a changed world, and that's to really remind me that my story obviously is my own story. Yours will be still being written for many of you and could be different. I think I would definitely come back as a woman. I don't want to be a man. I love being a woman. I love those extra choices we have and all the razzmatazz that the fellas can't have as easily, you know. But it does perhaps, on the other hand, make the female life, for many, more complex. That's okay, but we have to appreciate that we maybe got more choice. And back then, there were no role models. None of my friends were having babies so early in their career. None of the postdocs were even. You know, there was no one I could relate to. There were no role models then. So let's just look at some of this in a little more detail. There's a role model for you, do you like? I don't know whether this bag's been photoshopped. You know, we come in all shapes and sizes. I never said, oh, role model, here's my stall, role model, come and join my lab. And yet, being a female, and one of them, maybe not so many even back then, seems to have attracted a certain gender, doesn't it? That's Bill, the happy technician in the group. Claire will remember Bill, yes, Claire. Claire will particularly remember him because being a jolly scouser, what he did is Claire was going away for a weekend with a hold all the other was he'd stuff huge, big Sigma catalogues down at the bottom of the hold all, so she had to lug them wherever she was going. That'll teach her to go away for the weekend. But anyway, so yeah. We also have to bring our children up properly, don't we, if we have any, or our nieces. Or this is my granddaughter, and here she is, sweet Anna, reading the Journal of Molecular and Cellular Cardiology. Being exposed from an early age to the good stuff. So bound to be a ballet dancer. Not that there's anything wrong in that, but yeah. So one of the things, again, that we think about, I think more as a woman than a man, is things like, you know, was I going to stand here in flats or with a moderate heel? I can't do really high ones anymore, you know. Was I going to get my slap on? Of course I was. I always have my slap on in public. But I haven't been to a hairdresser's in 5 years. I know it shows, yeah. So we're all different is what I'm trying to say, and probably more complex than at least the 2 husbands I've been exposed to. And they don't take as long in thinking about what to do. So as I say, it's great. I love it. But sometimes we get judged also, don't we, on how we look more than the blokes. I suppose that's okay. Fact of life, move on. And there's the professor, yeah. So, I mean, stereotypes, me? No. But I liked that. So putting it in a nicer way, I suppose, is one size does not fit all. We have to find our own mould and model, don't we, of what we want to do. So do it your way, I think, is a key message. And what I really hate is, whether you were the working mother or the stay-at-home mother. And because I think both sides felt, guilt or uncomfortable or maybe even smug, I don't know, there was the always justifying why you did it and a little bit of, but of course this is better for little Snodgrass because, so we shouldn't go down there, we shouldn't even think about it, it's your choice and it's what works best for your family, your choices most of the time, yeah? So don't belittle others who make different points. And that reminds me to say also, some women either don't want, can't have children. Fine, Athena Swan and all this isn't just about women having babies. It's for all women, families, caring at the end of life as well. And again, there's some really good comedy sketches, which I'm not doing on, the conversation, you're the bloke and you come back after your wife's given, were you thinking of going part-time? No, we didn't expect to see you so soon, and all of that. They're just not asked the same sets of questions. Luckily, I think these days, we're more used to seeing them with prams and we're more willing to ask them about, how's it going at home than they were again. But yeah, it's still not quite the level playing field, perhaps. And I think this is really sad, the sort of sliding door, because I think what that is saying is maybe whatever choice you make, you always think, let's say the grass is greener on the other side. There's some lingering, am I missing out in this or the other? And we should be understanding. And so we're coming into a little bit, aren't we, that work-life balance that we hear so much about. If anyone's got the answer, I'm sure we'd all say, would you give it to us, please? But yeah, it's something many of us struggle with, what makes us happiest while still doing the job, etc., our hobbies, seeing our friends. But somebody who's not struggling with it is the Grim Reaper there, yeah? I hope we don't have to wait till we're dead to get the right work-life balance. We're used to the idea that we have to multitask and juggle. I think blokes as well as women, but again, probably more so on the whole for females doing that juggling. And it was the vogue when I went back to work that there was this thing that you would be a superwoman if you went back to work and carried on and you had a job, you would be superwoman, supermum and all of that. I said, I don't know, do you think that's Form B or Southport? I'm not sure. And is she going mad? Is she happy? I'm really not sure. But anyway, she's had an experience, you can tell us. And I said, don't just survive, thrive. There you go, thrive. But actually, it can get a bit on top of you at times. Great book when it came out. I'm not actually seeing the film. And it's really, all that juggling, all those pressures really do add up and can take a toll at times when you do forget the date of something or you double book and all the rest of it. So it's tough. And then there's things like this, the conflict. These are all about motherhood, conflict, torn, shattered. Well, that's encouraging, isn't it? So don't read them, let's move on. Yeah. So what can we do so that we're not shattered, torn and conflicted? What can we do? Easier said than done. Ditch the guilt, okay? So let's not have, I've done that, I wish I'd done that, no, I'm not home in time. So it's your decision, you made it, and you can change your mind. But again, nobody knows what's best for you and your family, so this is your decision. Don't be made to feel guilty. And just in case you need it, there are books and there are nice cards you can buy, and have them on your desk or whatever, so not guilty. My kids never did that for me. Yeah, who is this? I'm going to hunt them down. But yes, there are obviously rewards. What else can we do? We can maybe adjust, evolve if you like, delegate, say no. And again, I like this one. Good enough, yes, is the new perfect. I think that's where I started off from actually, but anyway, or this one even better, the cheat's guide to having it all. Now, I don't know whether they do what they say on the can, but the point I'm trying to get over is that things do not remain the same when you have family and carry on working. So to save yourself going mad, make some adjustments. And whether that's having a temporary decrease in your hours, coming back slowly, whatever, getting extra help at home, whatever, ask for it. Again, hard to do. You don't always have a glass, you know, you can see into the future. Yes, can be complex, so choose your partner well. Again, there are books to help, you know, in this. So The Lazy Husband, how to get... And I'm sure men, you can go ones that buy, you know, The Lazy Wife, but, you know, let's be fair. But, well, there he is, number 2. So far, he's doing all right, 33 years. However, you know, I don't want him to get complacent. He's called David, by the way. He's not much of a dandy, honest. Yes, not that sort of deep reflection. Okay, what else can you do? I come back to doing it your way and not giving up. Sometimes you have to move sideways, you have to take a shot, but don't give up on that goal, even if you have to replot the course. One size doesn't fit all. I actually did buy the book, Feel the Fear, and do it anyway. This one, don't let the bastards get you down. Yeah, because sometimes horrible stuff comes your way. Sometimes life is unfair. It's them, not you. Carry on, outsmart them, make them regret not giving you that job, promotion, accepting your paper, whatever. Carry on. And the sisters are doing it for themselves. Means that you might not always have a track of somebody else's to follow. So you're doing it for yourself. But that brings me on to be a sister. And I'm using sister not necessarily in the strictly familiar way. Blokes can be sisters too, of course. And by this I mean it's up to you, all of you sitting here, to step up to the mark. Volunteer for things, nominate others for rewards, initiate things if they're not there already. Don't think someone else is going to do it. If you think it's a good idea, it probably is. Talk to somebody, initiate, do things, be a role model. You don't just wake up one morning and think, oh, yeah, I fancy being a role model today. But just think, and it's whether you're, as a postdoc, you can be a role model for a PhD student. You know, how did you do it? Someone to talk to. It doesn't mean to say you have to be the Vice-Chancellor is the only role model for you. There are many role models. Likewise, volunteer to be a mentor. And if you think you need a mentor, you want to be a mentee, do it. So be a sister, not a, yep. And don't perpetuate the stereotypes, the assumptions and the prejudices. And don't pull that ladder up after yourself. Help to change the workplace culture. And of course, get involved with Athena Swan. I'll just have a sip while I leave you with that deep thought here. So for my societies, I'm a physiologist for the Physiology Society. We had an international meeting, they happen every 4 years, and I put together a booklet of UK women physiologists, and it's really nice to just see pictures and just short stories and to see that wobbly curve of careers. So there was something for most people in that book. And then again, last year we celebrated our 100th anniversary of admitting women to the society. So with a physiologist who's also she's got 2 PhDs, one's in medical history, Tilly Tansey. We created some history. We didn't create the history of the past. We told the story of women getting in, what it was like now. But also we had lots of young, early career researchers just saying how it was for them as well, so that the book will hopefully keep on inspiring. So I'm going to change gear a little bit. So now you can see I'm standing here before you as the director of Athena Swan for the University of Liverpool, yes. So now we have a tranche of logos and inspirational things. But I am director of Athena Swan for the University of Liverpool. I'm that because I got so cross with what it was like when I was putting the application together for my own institute. So not my institution, but my institute. And I thought, this cannot go on like that. This is so important. We need to be better at this. So I suppose the phrase old enough and daft enough, yeah. I went knocking on doors all the way up to start saying, we've got to do so. Thanks, Sue, yeah, you're director of Athena Swan now for the universe, which actually I'm not unhappy about at all. I've maybe even angled for it, who knows. So I spend 50% of my time doing the science and about 50% doing Athena Swan work. So, but after all, it is just me. And those are my director of Athena Swan faces, yes, on various days. Not so much of the grumpy old woman, because luckily my glass is mostly half full. But anyway, you see it all. So what are the Athena Swan headlines that started things off? As you know, if you actually put in university and images, you get things like blokes. Blokes walking around like that. So you've got your bronze, you're walking the walk, are you? Or are you just talking the talk? So to get to the next stage, to get things embedded, I say the same to my own institution and others, that some of the harder stuff is to follow. And we say if we keep the same rate of progress up, equality will come in about 50 years. Well, not quite fast enough, is it? So again, congratulations on the bronze. There's work still to be done, I expect, unless there's something weird about your institution. The other headline, of course, is why Athena Swan started off was the leaky pipelines. I won't insult your intelligence, but these are not the blokes when it comes to the fall off between postdocs and professors. Those are the blokes. So this is what we're trying to do something about, because it doesn't seem right, doesn't seem fair, seems a waste of talent. You know all those arguments, or else you probably wouldn't be sitting in this room tonight. So what I like about the Athena Swan process, being a scientist, is how important data and analysis are to that. So you need to illuminate, then articulate, then champion, rah, 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 and transform. We're on a transforming mission here. So that's Athena Swan. One of the cultural things, I think, as academics that we have, and as scientists, although of course Athena Swan is going to be broader, including professional services, including both genders, of course, because it's about equality, but is the conceptions of who does science, how doing science was set up, what those labs are like to work in, and certainly I think for many the working day culture, the working all hours culture was set up perhaps in a time when it was easier. Perhaps you had a wife at home, perhaps you even had a servant at home of some sort, domestic help. Anyway, does it really work for today's male and female? So set up to suit males, I would say. You can shoot me down later in discussion. But also for scientists, that unless you were totally devoted and probably only washed once a month, you weren't really a proper scientist. You weren't devoted enough, and it's almost a sneer, if you said, well, I've got the result. Someone like that? No. And that is just not true. You work better, smarter, more efficiently. You think better. You don't have to be there all the time. Of course, some experiments go on, but you can plan that, etc., etc. So it doesn't have to be that. It's a life choice. Nor does it mean that a collaborative and more sensible approach is the weak one. And again, that's maybe something you would disagree with or agree with, but it's worth thinking about. I think, oh, women, well, they're good at pastoral roles, aren't they? They're good at teaching, they're good at the detail. And yes, this may all be true, but are you recognising that? Are you recognising that in your work plan? Is it a good work plan that you've got that looks at the time spent doing these? Are there rewards for that? Are there men who maybe want these roles who you just, you're unconscious about, you don't think of them? So I think there's all that stereotyping, but in universities, by and large, more females are associated with those roles, and those roles weren't recognised for promotion, for example. A change very much in my own institution, and I hope in yours as well. And the counter to that is that you can be overlooked. Oh, well, she wouldn't want to do that. She's ever so busy, and she's got a child at home. She's too busy for that. We won't invite her, she's got to do that. And then, of course, well, she's no experience. Because nobody invited me. She's no experience. How can you do it if you've not got the experience? And she didn't put herself forward. And again, are we more reticent? Are we more hesitant at putting ourselves forward? Blokes traditionally, you know the old saying, you know, if they've got, you know, 40% of the job advert specs, they put themselves forward. Females, we have to have 99% before we put the application in. So again, talking stereotypes, but there is some of that we should be putting ourselves forward more. So we are changing, with Athena Swan, some of that workplace, some of the space. And what always works, I think, particularly with academics, but with companies as well, is a little bit of competition. So if you want to be one of the best places to work, what are you doing about it? This was actually a ranking order brought about by an American magazine called Working Mothers, but it's really taken off, this idea of how good is your company. So for example, these companies are no slouches. They're not there trying to do charitable endeavour. They're there looking for good business models to keep their paper. And they boast, if you go there, you're interested in a job, you're looking at, they boast about, you know, how good they are at this stuff. So universities should be doing some of that. And just look at this. This is from the Ernst & Young, famous accountancy firm. Look at this. We haven't gone this far. Wow. That's what I say when I read that. And that's not universities who should be, you know, hotbeds of liberal, progressive, you know, right on, yeah, of course, have a fridge, darling. You know, that's a hard-nosed doing that. Where if you want to get good ideas, look to some of these firms and see what they're doing. It's quite spellbinding almost, well, if you're interested in this kind of stuff. So, silver bullets, how to go for silver in a good way. You need lots of policies because policies actually give you something to either argue about or get people's agreement on and move things forward. I've learnt that. Make sure they go far enough to get real change. Stuff that I'm sure you've thought about, return to work packages, but they need to be tailored, don't they, to the individual. It's no point saying everybody has time off teaching if not everybody teaches, yes, etc., etc. So some of these are do as I say, not as I do or something, because we don't do all of these in Liverpool. Some of them are a hodgepodge. We do some hot desks and adjoining room for children to play in and do their homework when school's finish, but you've got to carry on with that experiment, for example. Breastfeeding room, meetings in core hours. This wasn't in core hours, but that's fine because there was plenty of notice, so anybody who wanted to do could be here. So it's not that everything has to be, you know, between 9:30 and 4, say, but important meetings, not Sue Wray trolling around here. Important stuff should be done in core hours. Things like that. That you have mentoring and role models and all that. I'm sure if you've not got it, you're thinking of it and you've probably got it anyway. Audit how many of your invited seminar speakers, for example, are female. And it could be that it's more than 50% in some professions, some courses. Equality. Some of these are a bit harder in that there might be more money associated with them. But what's often said is, why does, as an academic, getting that permanent job for many coincide with prime reproductive potential wanting, eggs running out time? Yes. And so one idea from Doug Hilton, who's an Australian, and this, if you look it up, last year, was to say, why don't we start appointing, and he said he will do this, appointing his faculty earlier. That by and large, you don't need somebody to have done 12 or 15 years as a postdoc to know if they're any good, actually. You can probably make that assessment after 2, 3, 4 years. Give them the job, have faith in your own decision-making process, and nurture them, look after them, give them some money, give them a heads up, and they will probably repay you in spades. They will be so grateful. This one, look at this, conference travel pay for hand a minder. Wow. I mean, it is like, yeah, wow. I like that one, yeah. And he gives money to female lab heads because he says they have different things to tackle and overcome, and he can do that. This is Australia. The men are men there, you know. Oh, sorry, did I say that? Our VC is Janet beer, and she says, I have no reason to doubt her, when she was a dean elsewhere, she shared that job as a dean. And that is just so unusual, isn't it? We're perhaps used to some job sharing, perhaps more with professional services staff than with academic tasks, but nevertheless, think about some job sharing for senior roles. Make your unconscious bias training compulsory and have a fit-for-purpose, transparent workload model. If you find one, that's really, really good, let me know. So this is the kind of thing that I'd say we are doing in Liverpool. You have to know why you're doing it. You need leadership. You've got to communicate. You need doers. And nobody wants to be stuck in that room, do we, with a lot of moaners and a lot of reasons why you can't do it. So if necessary, politely cull. Get in the doers. You normally know who they are, or someone will tell you. You need some power. So you need, on your committee for Athena Swan, so you need people who can make things happen, who can give you a bit of budget. Look at me, I'm underselling. Somebody can give you a really big budget, make you do things. Yeah. But you do. This is not that Machiavellian. It's sort of obvious, isn't it? And build engagement. You have a lot of friends, actually, once you can tell people what it's about. It's about equality. So get your data, get it analysed, get ideas, actions, process. Again, communicate what you're doing. Work at it, revisit, refine, progress it, communicate, and celebrate, as you did. So there we go. I like. So, yeah, we've got to carry on working at it. So if equality is going to take 50 years, pay equality, I can't remember, was it 170 years or something at the current rate for the genders in universities? So we had this discussion. We actually did it at the Women's Centre in Liverpool, but we did it. So engaging. So we're just trying to broaden our base to make sure we interact with others, not just our own. And again, in the refining, because Athena Swan is about equality, and an issue, now this was with the Students' Guild, Student Guild in Liverpool, was actually looking at mental health for men, where, as you're probably aware, there are issues, and it's something that they possibly find harder to talk about. Again, one doesn't want to stereotype, but there's stuff to do. So just going a little bit now further and more deeper into some of the issues. Those, I think, are just the bedrock of what's important for Athena Swan. I'm not going to talk about them all, but very briefly what we're doing in Liverpool, that we don't have a qualifying period. I mean, the idea that suddenly a load of pregnant women are going to turn up just so that they can be in Liverpool doesn't really. If you are actually in transit from one institution to another and you've got the job, I don't think that should mean, oh, you don't qualify, no money for you. You know, I mean, it's a nonsense. So why not just go for the moral high ground there? Family-friendly advisors, return to work packages. Again, I think a lot of the pressure areas are in early career researchers and postdocs. And they really have so little voice in some ways, don't they? They're not on most of the university committees. They do all the work. They're too busy working, aren't they, to actually come to the Athena Swan meeting. Not all of them. But these are the group of staff in Liverpool, we feel have to be better supported and encourage re-entry. We have a parents network and a nice website. I did say to them, I mean, beautiful families on all the web pages. Can we have no real people, please? You know, but anyway, we like to look at beautiful people, and I understand. Although he's not so beautiful, but never mind. Sorry, he's not one of mine. You know, he's lovely. But our creche is free for members of staff who are working on open days on a Saturday. So I think that's a reasonable thing to do. We are trying the 2-tick style scheme, which I think, do most of you know what that is? Yeah, if you qualify but you've got a particular characteristic, say, it's often done with disability, or it is done with disability. What about that for women? So they're starting that in engineering. Will be interesting to see how that goes, so that you get more through to at least shortlist and interview. Blinded shortlisting. Again, there's problems because sometimes the area is so niche. How can it really be blind? But it's an attempt in the right direction that maths are going to do. But also, you know, use better, exciting, younger person focused ways of advertising and telling your people about you, so that you will recruit from the broadest possible range, because that's what you want to do, so that they come to Edge Hill and not to Liverpool. Why am I telling you all this? Yeah. Promotion. There's always uncertainty and suspicion around promotion, and occasionally disappointment, of course. So I would say we truly do have transparent guidelines that are reviewed. We do look for gender balance. We make those who are on these committees have the unconscious bias training. And what's been really popular is having promotion workshops and mentoring for promotion. And at first I was a bit sniffy, thinking, oh, for goodness sake, surely you know what to do to get promoted. But as I say, that was me back in 1990. What do I know about the modern system and how things have changed? And these have been really popular with staff. And then at departmental level, just doing more. One head of department's even done a podcast explaining it, so it's there for a few years, and I guess he doesn't get as many knocks on the door anymore, so that's good. And giving feedback, whether you were successful or not, helping people build up their CVs. And I was a head of department, and I enjoyed doing it because of the nurturing side to it, and the fact that you could point people in the right direction. So I think you'll find, if you are, even if there isn't anything officially, go and ask people. People are often happy to help when they themselves are, the level above. Yeah, perhaps not, the person who's in competition with you always. Human nature. So yes, Liverpool, we've got some good awards, several silvers. Everyone's got a bronze going in for renewal. The university is putting in for a silver. We're currently bronze again, so we're going to put in November for that. Increase in female professors. Doesn't mean, oh, it's so easy now, all you have to do is be a woman to get promoted. Does not mean that. It means more women have been encouraged, criteria are clearer, panels are clearer what they should be looking for, asking for. And nobody said all those blokes who might have been promoted who actually, you know what, they weren't that good, just because they could, do a funny handshake or something, didn't mean they were that. Nobody's asking to have their chairs taken from them, are they? So, equality, I say again. So, as I say, we've got a female VC, hurrah, and she's great. And yes, we are having impact, I would say, because we're getting better answers to questions in the staff surveys. I wouldn't show you every single answer and the stats on it, but many of them have genuinely got better. So that's nice, we are having an impact. I think the final thing I want to say is, don't be too prissy and all the rest of it. What we're doing with Athena Swan, with equality and all that, should have an element of fun, maybe even sexiness, why not? So this is a Dolce & Gabbana advert, yes, yeah, it says it there. And I just think it's great, it's so colourful and nice, gets me looking. And you've got pregnant woman there, you've got older woman there, you've got baby there. And so they're not doing that just because it looks pretty. It does look pretty, I suppose, but they're doing that because that draws people in. And I think it's the same with Athena Swan. So, jazz it up a little bit, maybe. Give back, have fun, use all your team. Don't say no to anybody who wants to help you. And that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.